Today I'm hopefully I'm going to be preaching on an upbeat sermon today. I'm going to talk about our heavenly home. And my text is taken out of Revelation chapter 21, Revelation 21, verses 1 through 8. Revelation 21, verses 1 through 8. This might be a short one today, but don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's like I tell my kids when I'm on the phone with them, I only got so many dad words. When I run out of dad words, it's time to hang up. So I guess when I'm done, when I got all my preaching words done, it's time to shut up. So, for those of you that are viewing by YouTube this morning, we welcome you to our service, and we trust that you'll read along with us in the scriptures, and hopefully the message will be a blessing to you. Verse 1 says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, nor shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I will make things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. And he said unto me, It is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. And I will give unto them that is athirst a fountain of water of life freely. He that overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable, and murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their place in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." I want to talk to you about our heavenly home today. Now, a little girl was taking an evening walk with her father. Wonderfully, she looked up at the stars and exclaimed, "Oh, Daddy, if the wrong side of heaven is so beautiful, what must the right side look like?" At some point in our lives, we've all had a new home to move into. Oh, it may have had prior tenants that were there, and it may be a used home, but it's new to you. But then there are those of us that have had the privilege of having a brand new spanking home where nobody lived in it, and then you had the excitement of picking out colors for the carpets and colors for the paint for the walls, and you were deciding which room's going to serve for what purpose, and I personally think when you have a kitchen in the house, it ought to be one of the biggest rooms you've got in the house. Now, that's my preference, but that's not our case at our home. Remember all the planning excitement? You just couldn't wait to get moved in so you could get yourself acclimated and situated in the house, and you could finally say, "Oh, it's all over. Now I can sit back and relax." You've dreamed about all the new furniture, the new colors, and how everything color coordinates, and you're just so in love with your new home. But the downside of having a new home here on earth is the maintenance that's required to maintain it so it stays the way you want it. But one of these days, we're going to a new home that will be maintenance-free, that won't have a mortgage, because the price of that new home was fully paid at Calvary.
Amen.
Won't have no mortgage. Won't have to call, what's one of them gals, what's the gal on there that you call to get a contractor to come in? Angie. You won't have to call Angie to come in and have somebody paint your walls. Why, our walls are going to be, have rubies and stuff like that on the walls, precious metals. The streets, when you go outside your mansion, with the streets, they're going to be paved with gold. And I've been told that since the streets are described as glassy, that's the purest and finest of gold that could ever be processed. So we're going to have a brand new home. But this morning I want us to notice some things about our new home that we can incorporate in our thinking. The first thing, that there will be a new creation. Not only did mankind fall when Adam fell, but all the creation fell as well. There isn't a time that we can ever walk out here and not see a weed or a... Did you know a dandelion is a weed? Every time you go out there, we got dandelions in the yards out here, in the yard out here right now, and we're not going to have, there's not going to be any weeds when God makes things brand new. Genesis 3:17 says, and unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I have commanded you, saying, thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for your sake, in sorrow you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth unto thee, and you shall eat the herb of the field. Everything's going to be made brand new. Everything's new. Therefore, not only will mankind be changed through redemption, the whole world will share this type of redemption too. Right now, we read in Romans 8:22 and 8 and 23, for we know that the whole world groaneth and travaileth in pain and together until now, and not only they, but ourselves too, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even when we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. I don't know about you, but when I listen to people, even at the dentist office yesterday, I took her. She was really. You should have seen her yesterday. She was as loopy.
Friday.
She was as loopy as it gets.
Sedation dentistry.
I never seen her so happy.
They give me nice little pills.
She was really happy yesterday.
Took 2 people to take my car.
And I sat and I talked to the gentleman that was waiting on their dental appointments. They weren't loopy though. And we talked about how that our bodies are getting old. Well, one of these days, we're not going to have to deal with pain no more. We're not going to have to deal with age no more. Once we get to glory in our new home, it's without pain. There'll be no more pain. Some things will be brand new. God said He's going to create a new heaven and a new earth. Can you think of things brand new that you'll never have to work on ever again? I don't know about you, but I don't like mowing yard. I told her when I moved up here, I said, I took care of a yard for 24 and a half years. And I said, I ain't mowing yards no more. I'm sick of it. I don't like it. So I don't have to mow yard no more. She doesn't. No, she really don't want me on her lawnmower. In fact, she won't even let me drive her car.
Do you see him
She said,
drive?
you drive funny. And there'll be some things that won't be, there'll be no more. It says in verse 1, the latter B part of it, for the first heaven and the first earth have passed away. The things that we are familiar with now, there'll be no more. They'll be gone. We won't sit out here and see the trees that have to be cut now and then because they die. We won't have no lawns to mow. There'll be no shrubbery to shear. None of that. The old creation will be no more. 2 Peter 3:10 says, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, and in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also, and all the works that are therein, shall be burned up." Things aren't going to be the same. They're going to be gone. We'll have a brand new place. The sea won't be anymore. In the sea part of verse 1, it says that there was no more sea. Seas won't separate us anymore. We'll be able to walk from one place to the next place on this earth, on the new earth that He creates. And we won't have a sea that would separate us by boundary. Excuse me. The second thing that'll be brand new is a new city. It will be a pure city. He said, John said in verse 2, "And I saw a holy city, the new Jerusalem." It will be a presented city coming down out of heaven from God. God's the one that's going to send it. It will be a prepared city. You see, Jesus said in John chapter 14, He said, "I go to prepare a home for you. And if I go and prepare a home for you, I'm going to come back and get you." He's went ahead of us. After He ascended to heaven, He went to heaven to prepare a home for us. And it's not going to be a home like we'd have. It's not going to be one that we have to decide whether this is going to hold together or that's going to hold together. We'll not have to worry about anything like that. Jesus has already prepared it. When Jesus does something, He does it so it don't break. When he creates a new life in an individual, He creates that individual and He sees him just as if he'd never sinned. You're given a new nature. That new nature won't break. The third thing we'll see, there'll be a new communion. I don't know about y'all, but I love our fellowship dinners and suppers we have here. I love having fellowship with people. I like it because you get to know people that way. And that's the way it is right now with our Savior. We have sweet communion with Him whenever we get into His Word and we talk to Him. That's the way we have communion with Him now. It's a blessed communion because of the presence of God. In verse 3, it says, "And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and He shall dwell with them, and they shall be His people, and God Himself shall be with them." No longer do we have to put up a tabernacle and tear it down whenever we move, and put it up and tear it down. He's tabernacled with us. He takes residence within us, within our heart. It's a blessed communion because of the absence of grief. Because we know that when we can go to Jesus, we can leave grief there and it don't have to plague us no more. Unless we want it to. That's one thing about giving stuff to God. He wants you to leave it with Him, but He can't do nothing about it if you want to pick it back up and you want to hold around some more. He wants us to leave it there when we confess our sins. He wants us to just leave it with Him, because He won't remind us of it anymore. He already told us that in His Word. It's a blessed communion because of the absence of sadness. There won't be no more sadness. in verse 4, first part of that, it says, and he will wipe away every tear. There'll be no need for crying anymore. There won't be one tear shed in heaven. It's the absence of separation. There will be no more death. Death won't be a factor in losing a loved one. You'll be able to live with them in a forever state. We find that in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 53 through 56. 1 Corinthians 15, 53 through 56. I can't say that fast 3 times. Man. Then there will be a new covenant. First, there's a promise of a secure place. We find verses 5 and 6. He says, he who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, it is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. Everything's going to be brand new. I like brand new things. Who don't like, is there anybody here that doesn't like brand new things? Yeah, I like brand new things. Especially because God's going to make them brand new. They won't deteriorate. The second, there's a promise of a satisfying place. We're not going to want anything. Once God puts us in that new heaven and new earth, we're not going to want nothing else. Why, every time we turn around at the house, we're wishing that this could be done and that could be done. She's wanting some new hardwood floors in the living room so we can get rid of our carpet. But you know, that's one of them things that you wished you had. In heaven, there's not going to be anything there that we wished we could have. We're going to have all that we need. It's going to be a satisfying place. It'll be one of them places you can sit back in your easy chair and finally relax for once in your life and not have to worry about taking care of something. Then thirdly, it's going to be a safe place. It'll be the first place in a long time where you'll be able to leave without the door locked. I don't know how many times that she reminds me, close the garage door. Because I have a tendency to leave that thing open. When we leave the house, every door and window is locked in that house. I remember 50, 60 years ago, you could leave your house unlocked and leave for the day. Come back and everything would still be there. Can't do that today. You got to either have a guard dog or you got to have a security system. You got to have them peekaboo cameras out there to keep people from doing damage to your property. In heaven, we won't have that anymore. We won't have to have peekaboo cameras and guard dogs. And none of that. Because it'll be a safe place. It says in verse 8, but the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and the murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their place in the lake of fire, which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. There'll be none of that there. If burglars were let into heaven, they would have the most miserable time that anyone could have as a burglar up there, because they wouldn't be able to steal a thing. They couldn't dig on the streets of gold. They couldn't pry the walls with jasper loose from their precious stones. They'd be miserable. So it's a safe place. It's a secure place. And it's a satisfying place. There's an old legend of a swan and a crane. A beautiful swan alighted by the banks of the water, in which a crane was waiting about seeking snails. For a few moments the crane viewed the swan in a stupor of wonder, and then inquired, Where do you come from? I come from heaven, replied the swan. And where is heaven? Asked the crane. Heaven, said the swan. Heaven? Have you never heard of heaven? And the beautiful bird went on to describe the grandeur of the city, and told of the streets of gold and the gates and the walls where the precious stones of the river of life, pure as crystal, upon the banks is the tree whose leaf shall be for healing for the nations. In eloquent terms, the swan sought to describe the host who live in the other world, but without arousing the slightest interest on the part of the crane. Finally, the crane looked at the swan and asked, "Are there any snails there?" "Snails," repeated the swan. "No, of course there are no snails. There are not snails." Then said the crane, as he continued searching along the slimy banks of the pool, "You can have your heaven. I want snails." The fable has a deep truth underlying it. How many a young person to whom God has granted the advantages of a Christian home has turned his back upon it and searched for the snails? How many a man will sacrifice his wife, family, and is all for snails of sin? How many a girl has deliberately turned from the love of parents and home to learn too late that heaven has been forfeited for snails? I hope we're not desiring the snails of this world, but we're desiring a home called heaven. I hope that you've made your reservations and that heaven's going to be your home, because it's going to be a wonderful place. Can you imagine not ever having the rest of your life in eternity worry about somebody stealing from you, or ever having to go to a doctor, or ever having to go to a dentist or an eye doctor? Because everything's going to be made brand new. Everything. So I hope you've made your reservation. Well, let's take our hymn books and turn to page 437. I hope I got it here.